1 o'clock appointment with Mr. Gallagher, personnel. 1 o'clock luncheon with the representative of the Blakewell Paper Company.
60 years later, Marilyn Monroe's death still sends a chill through Hollywood and beyond. She was more than a movie star. Marilyn stood for beauty, fragility, and mystery all at once. So when she was discovered lifeless in her Los Angeles bedroom in 1962, officials moved fast with a simple answer, calling it a likely overdose. Yet whispers swirled before her body was even cold. Was it true suicide, or had she crossed powerful people with secrets to hide? Questions spread through studios, newsrooms, and late-night diners, feeding a rumor mill that never stopped. Documents closed the case in record time, but friends raised their voices, insisting the story felt wrong. Witness stories clashed. Strange behavior was noted at the scene, and key items went missing overnight. Some cried cover-up. Others blamed Hollywood's heartless grind, and a brave few pointed at political heavyweights who never wanted their links to Marilyn exposed. The shadows only deepened, turning tragedy into legend. Now a fresh spotlight cuts through the fog. New interviews, rediscovered files, and eyewitness memories suggest her end may have been planned, not accidental. The truth looks darker than anyone dared to imagine. From orphan to icon, Marilyn Monroe began life far from red carpets. She was born Norma Jean Mortensen in Los Angeles on June 1, 1926, with no father's name on her birth record and a mother, Gladys, battling serious mental illness. Instead of lullabies, Norma Jean knew chaos. Between 1935 and 1942, she bounced through foster homes and an orphanage, packing her suitcase again and again. Each new house meant new rules, new faces, and new heartbreak. While other kids played on safe streets, Norma Jean learned to adapt or be left behind. The orphanage brought order, but little comfort. Her mother disappeared into hospitals, and with no father in sight, the state took charge. Those lonely years shaped her views on love, trust, and self-worth. By June 1942, at only 16, Norma Jean chose marriage as her escape. She wed neighbor James Doherty, not for wild romance but for survival. If she stayed single, she risked going back to state care, so she grabbed the safest door she could find. Suddenly, a teenager was cooking dinners and playing grown-up, long before she felt ready. She thought marriage would bring the security she had never tasted. When James shipped out with a merchant marine during World War II, Norma Jean stayed in California and found work in munitions plant in Van Nuys in 1944. Among clanging machines, fate stepped in. A military photographer hunting for morale-boosting posters spotted her radiant face and asked for a quick photo. That snapshot set off fireworks. Modeling offers followed fast. Norma Jean dazzled magazines and calendars with her bright smile and magnetic stare. She was more than pretty. She had spark. Within months, she became a top pin-up model, earning her own money and a taste of freedom. The shy foster kid was turning into a woman who commanded the lens. In 1946, riding this wave, she signed her first contract with 20th Century Fox. But the bosses said her name needed Hollywood glitter. Norma Jean Mortensen transformed into Marilyn Monroe, borrowing Marilyn from stage star Marilyn Miller and Monroe from her mother's maiden name. The new name split her life in two. In public, she was Marilyn, glowing and confident. In private, she was still Norma Jean, fragile and searching. From 1947 to 1950, she landed small movie roles, each one a tiny step toward stardom. Her first credit came in Dangerous Years in 1947, where she played a waitress named Evie. The part was small, but she soaked up every lesson on set. She was not just posing anymore, she was acting. She kept taking bit parts, studying seasoned actors, and learning the studio system brick by brick. Her work ethic was fierce, and she treated every line like gold. A big break arrived in The Asphalt Jungle in 1950, a John Huston crime thriller. She appeared briefly as Angela Finley, the young companion of a crooked lawyer, yet her brief scenes lit up the screen. Critics noticed, audiences leaned in, and Hollywood saw more than a pretty face. By the close of 1950, the metamorphosis looked complete. Norma Jean, the restless orphan, had become Marilyn Monroe, a rising name with real momentum. The path from factory floor, the film set was no accident. Marilyn grabbed every chance, shaped her image, and pushed through a male-dominated business that often saw women as decorations. Still, the scars of childhood traveled with her. Inside the sparkling star lived a woman wrestling with deep anxiety and depression. Her early pain never vanished. She often lay awake at night, reaching for prescription pills to calm her mind, a habit that began long before she was famous. Criticism cut her like glass, and rejection sent her spiraling. She had mastered the art of the dazzling smile, yet behind it she felt unsteady. Hollywood gave her fame, but also a cage. Studios cast her again and again as the simple blonde bombshell, a role that sold tickets but boxed in her spirit. Marketing teams blasted the same image across billboards and magazines, and the world believed it. Meanwhile, Marilyn wanted complex roles that showed brains as well as beauty. She read books by the stack, studied acting with top coaches, and begged for richer characters. Most scripts still reduced her to a walking joke, caring more about curves and craft. Each cartoonish part chipped away at her hope, yet she kept fighting for respect. She was determined to prove she was more than the stereotype the town had glued to her name. Studio bosses loved the easy money her image produced, but Marilyn felt trapped, and the tension showed. Directors complained that she was late or nervous on set, yet they ignored the reason. Bright lights, critical eyes, and constant judgment stirred her anxiety till her hands shook. She leaned heavier on sleeping tablets and stimulants, a dangerous cycle that doctors of the day handed out freely. Each pill promised rest or energy, yet the mix only deepened her emotional storm. Privately, she searched for guidance, turning to acting guru Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio in New York. Under his method training, she dug into painful memories to fuel performances, hoping honest craft would replace fluffy parts. Her dedication surprised teachers and classmates, many of whom watched the film siren sit for hours, notebook in hand, fighting to grow. Still, Hollywood kept sending scripts with bubblegum lines and suggestive laughs. Between 18-hour days and relentless press questions about her figure, she began to believe the industry never planned to see her depth. The fight reached a boiling point in 1954 when she starred in The 7-Year Itch, and the famous subway grate scene blew up worldwide. The image of her white dress billowing into the night sky became legend, but behind the grin, she was furious. Crowds of men hooted while cameras rolled, and her then-husband, baseball hero Joe DiMaggio, stormed off set in anger. The moment sold tickets, yet Marilyn felt more exposed and less understood than ever. That same year, she walked out on her contract, fed up with one-dimensional roles. She flew to New York, formed her own company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, and announced she would choose her next projects. Reporters called her move risky, and studios tried to blacklist her, but she refused to crawl back. Her bold move paid off when she returned in 1956 with Bus Stop, playing Sherry, a singer with wounded dreams. Critics praised her honest portrayal, and many finally admitted she could act. Even with that victory, the battle for respect never really ended. Producers lined up with offers that looked progressive on the surface, yet still boiled down to the same stereotype. All the while her personal life grew messier. Marriages at DiMaggio and later playwright Arthur Miller ended under the weight of her mood swings, late-night shoots, and the glare of constant flashbulbs. Paparazzi camped outside her door. Reporters dissected her every stumble, and the star felt the walls closing in. She longed for children, yet faced miscarriages and heartbreak, adding to her grief. Friends saw her shift between joyful laughter and deep sorrow in a single hour. They worried the past, and the pills were gaining ground. By the late 1950s, Marilyn stood at a crossroad. She had tasted artistic triumph, yet still battled the ghost that followed her since childhood. Every party, every premiere, every love affair masked a quieter struggle. She wanted to be valued for her mind, yet headlines kept zooming in on her lips, her hair, her dress. And somewhere in that storm, decisions were made that would lead to the night of August 4, 1962. Some say she knew too many secrets about the powerful, whispered during parties at hidden houses. Others think her growing despair pushed her toward a fatal dose. What is certain is this: Marilyn Monroe left the world the way she lived it, wrapped in mystery and shining bright even in her final darkness. The questions that hang over her death cannot be answered without first understanding the fragile girl inside the star. Her life story shows how fame can lift and break a soul at the same time. Remember this each time her image flashes across a screen. Under the perfect smile was a heart forged in hardship, determined to be seen and forever silenced too soon. Marilyn's smash-hit parts brought fame, but robbed her soul of real joy. She felt boxed by shallow scripts while her richer talents sat unused. The clash between studio control and her own dreams sparked constant battles with 20th Century Fox. Even as the studio cashed giant profits, she earned less than leading men and had no voice in her path. Executives treated her like a shiny product, yet Marilyn longed to be seen as a true artist. She fought back, walking off sets, rejecting silly roles, and risking suspension to defend her worth. These showdowns were not tantrums, but bold moves by a woman grabbing her identity with both hands. Away from cameras, her heart waged its own war. She craved steady love and safe shelter, yet every marriage cracked under pressure. 3 unions ended in divorce, each one reopening scars from her uprooted childhood. The loudest heartbreak came with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. Their 1954 wedding looked like a fairy tale, yet trouble struck fast. Joe's strict ideas of marriage clashed with her glowing public image, turning tension into control. His jealousy exploded during the subway grate scene in The 7-Year Itch, when her white dress flew sky-high before cheering fans. Marilyn filed for divorce 9 months later, citing mental cruelty and the wound cut deep. Other marriages followed the same painful script, starting with hope, then drowning in fame's rough tide. She kept searching for the emotional home she never had, but love slipped through her grasp again and again. As the heartache grew, a darker struggle tightened its grip. Studio doctors doled out sleeping pills for rest and stimulants for pep, and Marilyn reached for them to tame anxiety, panic, and sleepless nights. What began as relief soon became dependence, pulling her into a dangerous loop of pills and alcohol. Soon she arrived late to shoots, forgot lines, or vanished entirely, earning a reputation for chaos. Directors groaned, co-stars sighed, and headlines mocked her unreliability, but few saw the true storm raging inside. Each missed call sheet hid panic attacks, crushing self-doubt, and drug fog that blurred night into day. The very roles that made her famous, hypersexual, naive blondes, deepened her inner split, forcing her to perform a mask she no longer believed. Hollywood system both created her image and trapped her within it, leaving her to fight for meaningful work while battling unseen pain. Marilyn still burned to win respect as a serious actress, craving stories that matched her true range. Yet every late arrival and anxious stumble on set stamped her as difficult, chaining her to the very image she wanted to shatter. The harsher the gossip grew, the fewer fresh chances she received, locking her inside a vicious loop that bruised her standing in Hollywood. Fans kept cheering, but studio patience thinned, and the doors she kicked open earlier began to swing shut. Adding more heat to those final years were whispers linking her to President John F. Kennedy and Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. Even unproven, the rumors were dynamite, thrusting a former foster child into the orbit of America's most powerful family during the razor-tense Cold War. Some say Marilyn felt validated. Others warned she was treading in waters full of political sharks. And either way, the speculation alone cast a long, dark shadow over her last chapter. Final climb, bright lights, and a storm brewing. By 1953, Marilyn gleamed as Hollywood's brightest comet. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire rocketed her into global fame, proving her comic timing matched her dazzling looks. But those films also cemented the bombshell label that kept shrinking her artistic room to move. Determined to escape the cage, she bolted to New York in 1955 and threw herself into method acting at the world-famous Actors Studio. Under Lee Strasberg's demanding as she dug deep, searching for truth in every breath, desperate to be judged as an artist instead of a poster. That soul-searching led to a new marriage in 1956 with playwright Arthur Miller. The match looked like a meeting of beauty and brains, sparking headlines that called her reborn. For a while she felt seen for her mind, not her silhouette, but soon Arthur's cool intellect clashed with her raw vulnerability, and her growing mental health battles pressed heavy on their love. The pressure kept climbing. By 1962, Marilyn's emotional health had nosedived. She started work on Something's Gotta Give, but illness, anxiety, and pill use made regular shooting almost impossible. Each absence angered studio chiefs, who finally fired her, a crushing public slap for someone fighting so hard to be taken seriously. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home, aged 36. The coroner ruled probable suicide by barbiturate overdose, and shockwaves raced around the globe. To millions, the verdict felt too tidy, and murmurs of deeper darkness rose at once. Questions burst open. Why was she alone? Why were timelines messy? Who really entered the house that night? Decades later, the Marilyn mystery still sparks debate, fueled by tangled testimony and half-hidden files. Some believe she surrendered to private demons. Others suspect a ruthless cover-up meant to silence her forever. A towering strand of doubt circles those rumored Kennedy ties. Friends, house staff, and investigators have repeated claims that Marilyn was emotionally involved with both brothers in her last months. Dr. Ralph Greenson, her psychiatrist, allegedly told confidants she leaned heavily on Robert Kennedy and felt abandoned by both men. Greenson is also the person many say discovered her body, though housekeeper Eunice Murray insists she found Marilyn first. Murray's version shifted through the years, and in a 1985 BBC interview she blurted, "Why at my age do I still have to cover this thing?" A line that ignited fresh suspicion. Forensic puzzles deepen the riddle. Deputy Medical Examiner Dr. Thomas Noguchi recorded lethal levels of pentobarbital and chloral hydrate in her blood, yet spotted zero-pill fragments in her stomach. If she swallowed that huge dose, where were the remains? Talk of possible injection or enema surfaced, but was never chased by investigators, leaving a glaring gap in the record. Police at the scene noticed odd behavior as well. Sergeant Jack Clemens, first LAPD officer through the door, later claimed Eunice Murray was washing bedsheets when he arrived, an action he called strange for a fresh death scene. He also felt the room looked staged and insisted the people inside sounded rehearsed. To his dying day, Clemens insisted he did not believe Marilyn took her own life. Close friend and actor Peter Lawford, brother-in-law to JFK, recalled a chilling final phone call where Marilyn allegedly said, "Say goodbye to the president and say goodbye to yourself because you're a nice guy." Lawford forever regretted not rushing to her side at once. Add government interest to the mix. Declassified papers confirm Monroe had an FBI file, partly due to civil rights activism and her connections with high-profile politicians. Many suspect her phone was tapped, her movements logged, and any diary she kept confiscated. Journalist Seymour Hersh wrote in The Dark Side of Camelot that Marilyn maintained a journal detailing encounters with the Kennedy brothers. No diary has surfaced, yet rumors claim it vanished from her home the night she died to protect reputations. In 1992, the Los Angeles District Attorney reopened the case after fresh claims emerged. The new probe said evidence for a homicide was insufficient, but admitted original investigators missed key steps and left glaring inconsistencies. So the official label stayed probable suicide, even while officials quietly conceded the full truth remains buried. Today, Marilyn's life and death remind the world how dazzling fame can collide with hidden pain. Behind her smile stood a woman who fought for respect, searched for love, and may have known secrets powerful enough to endanger her life. The final answer is still locked in shadows, yet her legend blazes on, brighter than ever,